Over the next few minutes, I'll expose the 5 things that I think Diablo 4 needs to win players, including myself, back with Season 2. For context, I haven't played Diablo 4 since maxing out my Necromancer and my Rogue, because there is no real incentive to play Diablo with so many other AAA titles fighting for our precious time as gamers. Now this really breaks my heart, because post my subathon on Twitch when I really got into YouTube, I've mainly been a Diablo content creator, and right now there's not much content to create on. I love ARPGs and I've played them all, and I want to love Diablo 4. So, with the combined knowledge of each of them and the power of God and anime on my side, let's get into it. Starting off with gear drops and itemization, there is a ton that I could say here, but I want to address a few things specifically. The itemization in Diablo 4 just plain out sucks. There's no good gear beyond level 70, and the only chase pieces are so rare and inconsequential that they don't even fit into good builds near the end. If you want to beat Uber Lilith, it's nearly impossible to do so with an Uber unique. That doesn't make any sense. The hundreds of stats, modifiers, and affixes that can go on gear are all pretty much useless when you consider the fact that you only really need health, crit chance, crit damage, and vulnerability. The other stats are non-viable and are better off scrapping. Lastly, counterintuitive to most ARPGs, there aren't builds to target things. There are only one-size-fits-all endgame builds, and even these are decisions that you're locked into because you can't change your builds easily. Now, my proposed fix for this whole thing would be that Blizzard should prioritize the diversity of gear, making builds that can achieve different goals such as gold farming, high single target, high AoE for speed clearing, and reduce the overall clutter so that the average player can more easily make decisions and play without needing 5 websites in a handbook just to breathe in Sanctuary. I also would create a crafting system allowing people to specifically target gear and affixes that helps their specific build and implement a saved loadout system. This way, if you want to change your gear, Paragon board, and abilities on the fly, it can still have a cost, but all be done at the click of a button. The second focal point I'd want to fix is the mapping in the late game. Now, I know those are counterintuitive, but there's a bunch that I want to dig in about these two. For starters, anyone who has passed level 70 understands that the endgame is running nightmare dungeons endlessly because nothing else is as valuable or worth your time. Not to mention, the nightmare pool is not only tiny, but has so many worthless affixes that you only really end up running 1 or 2 non-stop over and over. This really sucks. When you take into consideration that the only other endgame activities are world bosses, hell tides, legion events, Uber Liliths, and then the Tree of Whispers, you might think there's a lot to do. But all of these are a waste of time. They don't offer anything unique, and they're just a distraction to your actual leveling goal. Going back to Nightmare Dungeons, the designs are all built counterintuitively to other ARPGs and even other Diablos. The backtracking for objectives, the ceaseless trap events at an altar or a health font, and quickly you begin to realize that they didn't consider the player in the actual gameplay. Instead, they just considered how they could make something feel challenging artificially. For this, my suggested fix is very simple. Create unique rewards and gear that are tailored to the activity that you're doing, such as gear that does more damage in Hell Tides, XP boosting gear when doing open world activities, and maybe even an overhaul of loot in general at the end of the game. Uber Lilith should give you a choice of an Uber unique, not a pile of yellows when you beat her. My third pain in my side is everything revolving around crossplay and social interaction. This might seem small to you, but the social aspect of a video game to me, especially a live service one, is important. Alternatively, the ability to play it solo and not really rely on the multiplicative scaling for the experience points should be prioritized just as much. I run a clan titled Better, in which we've cultivated around 100 members, and despite large efforts to carry these members and interact, the game almost doesn't incentivize this beyond the additional XP that you get for queuing in a group. Did you know that Diablo 4 has a really excellent and functioning voice chat feature? Most people I've played with didn't, and it's clearer than party chat or Discord in most cases. However, the game presents as a solo experience, and it doesn't do a good job at creating what a functional world would feel like. Additionally, with the lack of trading items and need for other players for most all content, it creates an environment where no real role is needed in a group or plays better socially. But instead it creates 4 glass cannons that all do the same thing, essentially just with different colors. I would personally address this by more clearly highlighting the social features, giving clans incentives for running things together such as transmogs for beating bosses or nightmares, additional titles, maybe even things like tabards from World of Warcraft. I would also break the barrier by allowing people to trade and socialize freely with additional chat options and more in-town activities to bring people together as opposed to strangers crossing paths. My fourth complaint comes in the way of quality of life and user interface frustration. See, when you're trying to block out all the not fun things in Diablo and just run nightmare dungeons like a good boy, you're still slowed down by a tiny inventory, a tiny stash, a ton of useless gear, and that you have no way of filtering, and this is awful as it forces players to return back to town after every dungeon and causes 20 minutes of additional sorting. Toss in the fact that your limited stash that apparently everyone can load but not see is only 5 pages, and those are limited, means that running alts is impossible if you care to switch loadouts or class specs. It is hard enough to manage inventory on 1 character, but 2 or 3? Well, you're better off going to fuck yourself. There are so many aspects that cannot be crafted from the journal, but they clog up your inventory space. But God forbid you accidentally salvage an aspect you'll need later, you'll be RNG farming for days to make up for that mistake. It also hurts my brain that just existing within the world gets harder and harder with each patch. Less XP, mounts are stuck everywhere, drop chances change weekly like some guys throwing a dart at a percentage board. Blizzard should address this by looking to their competitors and their own discography of other Diablo games and put the fucking things people want in the game. Let me filter my loot on the ground and let me send it back to my stash from the Nightmare Dungeon itself. Let me have a stash for my character and a separate 2-page account-wide stash for gems and uniques. I also want to be able to salvage an aspect and have it added to my journal. Perhaps the highest aspect salvage would be the one the journal recognizes me when crafting? God forbid I need to craft the same piece of gear twice in an entire seasonal wipe. And lastly, but not leastly, is the experience in gold economy. I'm no stranger to long leveling times in ARPGs. I've done it in Last Epoch, I've done it in Path of Exile, but it is really annoying that with only one real way to level beyond level 70, they continuously nerf experience points and then sell it back to you in the form of a battle pass. A lot of people don't even know this, but in Diablo 4, level 85 is the halfway point in terms of experience points from 0 to 100. But let's say you have all the aspects and you're ready to swap your gear. You'd better be damn sure, because that little maneuver is going to cost you a smooth 20 million gold, which for non-veteran players means roughly around 30 hours of gameplay. If you pair that with the limited resources such as iron and silver ore, you'll go broke just trying to be better in the game. My fix for that? Incremental experience points at different level milestones so that when you hit a new milestone, you passively acquire higher rates of experience points to match the difficulty of content. I would also, simply put, reduce the cost of everything by over half. No one besides the guy from the viral video that was recently on Twitter likes to be kicked in the nads when they don't need to, and I sure as hell value my time spent gaming. And that's the video. If you have other problems and even suggestions to fix them, leave them in the comments below. As for me, I'll still be playing Diablo when I'm not getting cute vampire kisses over in Baldur's Gate. This video may seem negative, but in reality, I'm just pumped for the chance to win on one of my favorite games ever. I have high hopes for Diablo, and I want to be there when it's at the top. Like the damn video, and I'll see you in the next one.